The temperature had dropped to 12 degrees below zero when Garrett Colton heard footsteps on frozen gravel. 11:23 at night, Saturday in January, Pine Ridge Township, Pennsylvania, population 4,000, and change, most of them already asleep in warm beds with furnaces humming and dogs curled at their feet. Garrett was locking the front door of Riggs Roadhouse, the biker bar he had owned for 19 years, when the sound reached him. Soft crunching, hesitant, too light to be one of his brothers coming back for a forgotten wallet or phone. He turned, expecting maybe a drunk who had wandered off the county road. Found something else entirely. A child stood in his parking lot, 7 years old, maybe 8, wearing purple fleece pajamas with little white stars on them. No coat, no hat, no gloves, no shoes. Her bare feet left small red prints on the frozen ground, frostbite forming on toes that had gone from pink to blue to gray. Her whole body shook with tremors that came in waves, each one rattling her small frame like wind through bare branches. She clutched something silver in her right fist, held it so tight her knuckles had gone white. Garrett Colton stood 6'3", weighed 240 pounds. Gray streaked his beard in the ponytail that hung past his shoulders. Scars marked his knuckles from fights he had won and fights he had lost. His leather vest bore patches that read Hell's Angels and Road Captain and Pine Ridge Chapter. 44 years of hard living had carved themselves into his face. Strangers crossed the street when they saw him coming. Mothers pulled their children closer. Store clerks watched him with nervous eyes until he left their establishments. He was exactly the kind of man most people taught their daughters to run from. But this child did not run. She looked up at him with dark brown eyes that held more terror than any 7-year-old should ever know. Eyes that had seen things. Eyes that were asking for help from the only place in a 15-mile radius still showing light at this hour. A biker bar, a Hell's Angel, a man who looked like violence made flesh. And she walked straight toward him. Garrett dropped to one knee immediately, made himself smaller, less threatening, put his scarred hands on his thighs, palms up open and visible. "Hey there, sweetheart." His voice came out softer than it had any right to, given the gravel that 2 decades of cigarettes had left behind. "You are safe now. What is your name?" The child's teeth chattered so hard the words came out in fragments. "Rosie. Rosie Bennett. I am 7. My stepdad locked mommy in a big metal box in the woods, and she is going to die, and nobody helped us, and I ran and ran, and you are the only place with lights on, and please, please, please." The words tumbled out in one desperate breath, a flood of terror compressed into seconds. Then her voice broke completely, and she stood there, shaking, tears freezing on her cheeks before they could fall. Garrett looked at her feet, gray toes on frozen gravel, looked at her pajamas, thin cotton soaked through with melted snow, looked at her face streaked with frozen tears and raw desperation, looked at what she held in her fist. She opened her hands slowly as if afraid the small object might disappear. A silver wedding ring sat in her palm. Simple band, single small diamond, and on the metal dark against the shine, a smear of dried blood. Mommy threw this out the truck window. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Before he locked her in, she threw it so I would know. So I would tell someone. 3 seconds. That is how long it took Garrett Colton to make the calculation every decent human being makes when a child asks for help in the middle of the night. Is this real? Am I being set up? What if I am wrong? Then he looked at her feet again. The red prints trailing behind her across 20 feet of parking lot, the blue-gray tinge of frostbite claiming her toes. The small bloody marks where ice crystals had cut into skin too young and too soft for this kind of cold. No setup involved this. No trick required a 7-year-old to destroy her own feet on frozen ground. This was real. How far did you run, Rosie? 2.3 miles. The answer came immediately precise despite the chattering teeth. I counted the street signs. Mommy taught me how. She said if there was ever an emergency, I should count the signs and remember the numbers because that is how far I went. From your house, from our house. 1747 Ridgemont Trail. I broke my bedroom window and climbed down the porch roof because the doors were locked from outside, and stepdad thinks I am sleeping, but I heard him on Thursday night. She paused, took a shaking breath. Her whole body convulsed with cold, but her eyes stayed locked on Garrett with fierce determination. I heard him on the phone in the garage. He said it is happening Saturday night. Weather is perfect. Storm coming in. Temps dropping below zero. He said the box is ready. I will put her in around 6 p.m. Drive her out to the spot. By Sunday morning, when I discover she is missing, she will already be gone. The words emerged in a flat recitation, a child's perfect memory of adult horror delivered without full comprehension of what she had memorized. He said hypothermia takes 8 to 10 hours in those temps. Then it is just waiting. Maybe she is found in spring. Maybe never. Either way, it is ruled exposure. Accidental death. I am the grieving widower. Then he said, her voice caught. Then he said 475,000 from the policy plus the 41,000 left from her money. Over $500,000, split two ways like we agreed. Then you and me are gone. New life out west. The parking lot went absolutely silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. Then he said, just like with Rebecca. Nobody questioned that one. Nobody will question this. Garrett felt ice slide down his spine that had nothing to do with January. This child had not just overheard a murder plot. She had overheard a confession, a reference to a previous death, a pattern. When did your stepdad put mommy in the box? 5:47 p.m. Rosie's voice steadied with the precision of someone clinging to facts like a lifeline. I watched from my window. He made her get in the truck. She was crying. She threw the ring. I snuck outside at 6:15 when he came back without her and found it in the driveway. She held up the ring again. The bloodstain caught the light from the roadhouse sign. This is from her first husband, my real daddy. He died 2 years ago in an accident. Mommy never takes this ring off. Never. She threw it so I would know. So I would tell someone. Garrett looked at the small silver band, looked at Rosie's face, understood what Cora Bennett had done in her final moments of freedom. She had sent a message, not a goodbye, not a gesture of despair, a signal, a code between mother and daughter that meant run, get help, do what I taught you. What time is it now, sweetheart? 11:23. Rosie answered instantly. I checked the clock in your window. Garrett did the math. 5:47 to 11:23. 5 hours and 36 minutes since Cora Bennett had been sealed in a metal box somewhere in the Pennsylvania woods. If the stepfather's timeline was accurate, 8 to 10 hours until hypothermia became fatal. That left somewhere between 2.5 hours and 4.5 hours, maybe less. Metal conducted cold faster than ground exposure. The temperature would keep dropping through the night. Weather Service had predicted -2 by 4 in the morning. They were not dealing with hours. They were dealing with minutes. Rosie. Garrett kept his voice calm even as urgency screamed through his blood. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do you know where the box is? Where he took your mommy state game lands 93, 4.7 miles northeast of town. There is an old logging road that goes past a big oak tree that got hit by lightning, and then there is a creek, and you cross the creek, and it is right there in a clearing. She reached into the pocket of her pajama pants with trembling fingers, pulled out a folded piece of paper, opened it to reveal a drawing made in crayon. A house at the bottom, a road leading up, a tree marked with a lightning bolt, blue lines for a creek, an X at the top with the word box written in shaky capital letters. I drew a map. The words came out fierce with pride, despite her chattering teeth. Mommy taught me how to read maps. She said emergencies mean you have to be smart, not scared. So I was smart. I made a map. Garrett took the paper carefully, looked at this child's work. A 7-year-old's emergency response drawn in purple and yellow crayon, accurate enough to potentially save her mother's life. He felt something shift in his chest, something that had been frozen since his daughter Emily died of leukemia 7 years ago, in a hospital bed with his hand in hers. Rosie Bennett, he said, meeting her eyes directly, your mommy is not dying tonight. Do you hear me? Every single one of my brothers is going to search those woods until we bring her home alive. I do not care if it takes all night. I do not care if we have to tear apart every acre of forest between here and the county line. He paused, let the words settle. We are bringing her home, and the man who hurt her is never going to touch either of you again. That is not a promise I make lightly, sweetheart. That is a promise I keep. Rosie stared at him. Then tears spilled down her cheeks. Not the frozen tears of terror she had arrived with. These were hot. These were relief. You believe me. The words were so small, so fragile, carrying the weight of every adult who had not believed her, had not listened, had looked at her stepfather's charming smile and her mother's bruised silence and chosen the easier story. I believe you. Garrett said it like a vow. Now let me finish what you started. He scooped her up in one motion. She weighed maybe 50 pounds, hypothermic and half frozen, but she wrapped her arms around his neck with trust that broke something open inside him. He kicked open the roadhouse door. Inside, two brothers were cleaning up after closing. Dalton Graves, who everyone called Hawk, wiping down the bar. A prospect named Miller stacking chairs in the corner. Both men looked up, saw Garrett standing in the doorway with a barefoot child in his arms, a child whose feet were leaving dark red marks on the floor, whose pajamas were soaked through, whose face showed frostbite forming on her nose and cheeks. Hawk. Garrett's command voice cut through the space. First aid kit, thermal blankets. Now, Miller. Get every brother within 50 miles on the phone. Tell them we have a mother locked in a metal tool chest in State Game Lands 93. Hypothermia timeline. And a 7-year-old who just ran 2.3 miles barefoot to ask for help. Both men froze for exactly 1 second. Processing. Then they moved. Hawk grabbed the emergency kit from behind the bar. Former Army Ranger medic, trained 12 years in combat zones before he came home and found a different kind of brotherhood. Miller already had his phone out, fingers flying across the screen. Garrett set Rosie down gently on the bar top. The wood was polished smooth, warmer than the ground outside, and Hawk immediately started working on her feet. Easy now. Hawk's voice was low and calm, the same voice he had used talking to wounded soldiers in places most Americans had never heard of. We need to warm you up slow, sweetheart. Too fast, and we do more damage than good. He wrapped thermal blankets around her shoulders, filled a basin with lukewarm water from behind the bar. This is going to feel weird at first, like pins and needles. That means the blood is coming back. That is good, even though it does not feel good. You understand? Rosie nodded. She had stopped shaking as violently, the blankets in the heated air of the roadhouse doing their work. She looked at Garrett. You have to hurry. Her voice was steady now, controlled. The voice of a child who had been forced to grow up too fast because the adults around her had failed. Mommy does not have much time. Garrett pulled out his phone. Hit the number labeled Iron Vic. 1 ring, 2. Riggs. The voice on the other end was rough with sleep. 61 years old, graybeard to his chest, president of the Pine Ridge chapter for the past 15 years. This better be good. It is not good. Garrett cut him off. It is an emergency. I need every brother we have. Full patch prospects, hang-arounds, everyone. State Game Lands 93, Northeast Access Road. Now, a pause. Then Victor Tanner's voice shifted. Lost the sleep. Found the steel. What is happening? 7-year-old just ran 2.3 miles barefoot through sub-zero temps to report her mother has been locked in a metal tool chest in the woods by her stepfather. Mother has been in there since 5:47 p.m. It is now 11:31. Hypothermia timeline puts her at maybe 3 to 4 hours max before cardiac arrest. Stepfather is planning to report her missing Sunday morning. Claims she wandered off during an argument. Collect $475,000 in life insurance. Silence on the line. How reliable is the witness? Garrett looked at Rosie, at her ruined feet, at her crayon map, at the wedding ring still clutched in her hand. She is 7 years old. She broke her bedroom window to escape. She memorized her stepfather's phone conversation about the murder plan. She has her mother's wedding ring with blood on it. And Hawk is treating her for frostbite right now because she ran 2.3 miles in pajamas and bare feet to find help. He paused. She is reliable. More reliable than any adult I have ever met. Say no more. We are coming. The line went dead. Garrett turned back to Rosie. Hawk had her feet wrapped now, color slowly returning to her face as the blankets and warm water did their work. Rosie, I need you to tell me everything you know about where your mom is and who did this. Everything. For the next 8 minutes, Rosie talked, and the brothers listened. She told them about the house at 1747 Ridgemont Trail, a nice place in a nice neighborhood. White siding, green shutters, American flag on the porch. The kind of house that looked like the American dream from the outside. She told them about Wade Hollister, her stepfather for 19 months, construction foreman, volunteer firefighter, church deacon at Pine Ridge Community Church. The kind of man everyone trusted. The kind of man who brought casseroles to sick neighbors and organized fundraisers for the fire department and smiled at everyone he met. The kind of man who hit her mother where the bruises would not show. She told them about how Wade had appeared 6 months after her real father died. Kevin Bennett, construction accident, scaffolding collapse, died on impact, left behind a wife and daughter and a $263,000 wrongful death settlement. Wade had been so nice at first. Rosie remembered. He brought flowers. He fixed things around the house. He told jokes that made Mommy laugh for the first time since Daddy died. He said he wanted to take care of them, said they should not have to be alone. They got married 4 months later. And then everything changed, not all at once. Rosie explained it with the terrible clarity of a child who has learned to watch for danger in small shifts of adult mood. First, Wade moved them away from their old house, away from Grandma and Grandpa, away from Mommy's friends. He said the new house was better, closer to his work, better schools for Rosie. Then Mommy's phone broke and Wade said he would get her a new one, but he never did. Then Mommy's car had problems and Wade said he would fix it, but he never did, and soon Mommy could not go anywhere without Wade driving her. Then the money started disappearing. Daddy's money, the settlement money that was supposed to take care of them. Mommy asked about it once and Wade got so angry his face turned red, and after that Mommy stopped asking. Then the hitting started. Rosie did not describe it in detail, did not have to. The picture emerged in fragments, sounds through thin walls late at night, Mommy coming to breakfast with dark circles under her eyes and long sleeves even in summer. The way Mommy flinched when Wade raised his voice. The way Mommy said everything is fine with a smile that did not reach her eyes. But Mommy was not just waiting to be saved. Rosie's voice changed when she talked about this part. Lifted with something like pride. Mommy knew, she knew something bad was going to happen. So she taught me things. Secret things Wade did not know about. The map reading, the street sign counting, the emergency plans practiced like games. Hide and seek, but with rules about where to run and who to find. Mommy said if anything ever happened to her, I should find a place with lights on and lots of people and tell them everything. She said I should not be scared of people who look scary because sometimes the scariest looking people are the safest ones. She said mean people usually look nice because that is how they trick everyone. Garrett felt those words land like physical blows. Cora Bennett had seen this coming, had known her husband was capable of killing her, and instead of collapsing into despair, she had spent months preparing her daughter, teaching Rosie how to survive, teaching Rosie how to save her. 7 weeks ago, Rosie continued, a lady came to our house, from the government, CPS. I told my school counselor that stepdad hurt Mommy, and they sent a lady to check. What happened? Oh, Wade answered the door. He was so nice, invited her in, made coffee, talked about how sad it was that Mommy was struggling with grief from my real daddy dying, how Rosie had a vivid imagination. Lots of children do after losing a parent, he said. Rosie's jaw tightened. The lady talked to Mommy alone for like 5 minutes. Mommy said everything was fine, because Wade was right there in the other room listening. And the lady believed her, wrote something down and left, said the case was closed. Garrett thought about that CPS worker, probably overworked, probably carrying 40 other cases, probably trained to look for obvious abuse and move on when she did not find it, probably never considered that a charming church deacon, volunteer firefighter, good neighbor could be a predator. What else happened? Old Mrs. Owens next door heard screaming one night. In October, she called the police. An officer came. Wade answered the door, so friendly, so concerned. Said Mommy had dropped a pan and startled herself. The officer talked to Mommy separately, but Wade was standing right there in the doorway watching, and Mommy said everything was fine, and the officer left. Rosie's voice went flat. They filed a report. I heard Wade tell his girlfriend on the phone. He said verbal argument only. No further action required. He thought it was funny. Girlfriend Bryn. Rosie's face twisted with the kind of hatred only a child can hold for someone who has helped destroy her family. Bryn Kessler, Wade has been seeing her for 11 months, since before he married Mommy. I heard him tell her on the phone that once he got the insurance money, they would move out west together. Start over, just like they planned after Rebecca. The name hung in the air. Rebecca. Who is Rebecca, Wade's first wife? Rosie's voice dropped. She died 6 years ago, in January. Car accident. Went off a bridge into icy water. Wade got insurance money from that too. Garrett felt the cold of recognition settle into his bones. 2 wives, both dead in January, both insurance payoffs, and now a third wife locked in a metal box in the middle of winter. Pattern. This was not a desperate crime of passion. This was calculated murder. Refined, repeated, perfected. What about church? Garrett asked. Your mommy went to church. Did she ask for help there? Rosie nodded slowly. Pastor Mark Holland. Mommy went to him in September, after service one Sunday when everyone else had left. I know because she told me about it when we were alone. She said, Pastor Mark, I think Wade is going to hurt me. I am scared. And what did the pastor say? He said he would talk to Wade, arrange marriage counseling. Rosie's voice carried a bitterness far too old for 7. He said marriage is sacred. He said Wade was a good man who loved his family. He said Mommy should pray for strength and patience. The pastor had chosen the charming deacon over the frightened wife, like everyone else. Mommy tried one more thing, Rosie continued. She went to the courthouse in November, tried to get a protection order, a paper that would make Wade stay away from us. What happened? The judge said there was not enough evidence. No police reports of physical abuse, no hospital records, no witnesses, just Mommy's word against Wade's. And Wade showed up with his firefighter friends and his church friends, and they all said he was a good man who would never hurt anyone. She looked at Garrett with eyes that had seen too much truth too young. The judge said no. Mommy cried all the way home. And that night Wade hit her so hard I heard the sound from my bedroom. And the next morning, Mommy had a cracked rib, but Wade would not let her go to the doctor. 4 times, Cora Bennett had tried to get help 4 times. CPS police. Church, court, 4 institutions designed to protect vulnerable people. 4 failures. And now she was freezing to death in a metal box because every single safety net had holes too big to catch her. The roadhouse had filled while Rosie talked. Garrett looked up from his position beside her to find 20 brothers standing in silence. More coming through the door, more headlights cutting through the parking lot outside. Iron Vic stood near the entrance. 61 years old, gray beard to his chest patches, reading President in Pine Ridge and 30 years of hard riding. Behind him, more brothers filed in. 30, 40, 50. The rumble of motorcycles outside was constant now, engines cutting off one by one, boots on gravel, leather and chrome filling the lot. Vic walked to where Rosie sat, still wrapped in thermal blankets, her feet now properly bandaged by Hawk. He knelt like Garrett had done, made himself small for a frightened child. Rosie, my name is Victor. Everyone calls me Iron Vic. I am the president of this club. That means when I say something is going to happen, it happens. Rosie looked at him, measured him with those dark eyes that had learned not to trust easily. We are going to find your mother. Vic's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. We are going to bring her home, and we are going to make sure the man who hurt her faces justice. Not violence, not revenge. Justice, the kind that comes with handcuffs and prison cells and judges who actually listen this time. He paused. Can you be brave for a little longer? How much longer? However long it takes. Maybe 2 hours? Maybe 3. We will not stop until your mommy is safe. Rosie looked at Garrett. Back at Vic. Around the room at 50 massive bikers in leather vests, all watching her with expressions that were somehow both terrifying and gentle. Men who looked like monsters but spoke like protectors. Will someone stay with me, Hawk here? Vic gestured to the former ranger who had treated her feet. He has 2 daughters about your age. He knows how to take care of scared kids. And Doc Patricia is on her way. She used to be an emergency room nurse. She will make sure you are okay while we work. You promise you will find her. Every man in that room felt those words land. Every man remembered someone they had failed to save. A wife, a mother, a daughter, a friend. I promise. Garrett said it before Vic could respond. and I keep my promises. Rosie reached into her pajama pocket, pulled out a small plastic figure. Spider-Man, paint chipped and worn from years of love. One leg slightly bent. Mommy gave me this when Daddy died. Rosie's voice was steady now. She said Spider-Man protects people. That is what heroes do. They protect. She held it out to Garrett. You take it. For luck. Bring her home. Garrett took the toy, closed his massive fist around it gently, felt the worn plastic against his calloused palm. He tucked it into his vest pocket, right over his heart. I will give it back to you when your mommy is safe. Deal. Vic stood, turned to the assembled brothers. His voice carried like a command. Brothers. A 7-year-old child just ran over 2 miles barefoot in sub-zero temperatures to ask us for help. She did what 4 different authorities failed to do. She saw wrong and she acted. He paused. Let that sink in. Now it is our turn. He held up Rosie's crayon map. State Game Lands 93, 4.7 miles northeast. We are looking for a 6x3 metal tool chest. Probably Joe Box brand, industrial grade. Woman inside named Cora Bennett, 31 years old, 5'4", approximately 118 pounds. She has been in there since 5:47 p.m. Current time is 11:42. That gives us maybe 3 to 4 hours before hypothermia becomes fatal. He looked around the room, made eye contact with every man present. Hawk, you are staying with Rosie? Doc Patricia is en route. You coordinate medical care for the child. Hawk nodded once. Reaper, you pull every record you can on Wade Hollister. Accident reports on Rebecca Hollister from 2019. Death certificates, insurance policies, CPS reports, everything. Find the digital trail. A thin brother in the corner laptop already open nodded. Smoke. You are on phones. Find the girlfriend Bryn Kessler. Find bank records. Find the evidence we need to make this airtight. Another nod. Everyone else. You are with me. We are splitting into search teams. Military grid pattern. Every acre of those woods gets covered. We find that chest. We bring Cora Bennett home alive. He paused. And we document everything we find. Photographs, GPS coordinates, timestamps. Because when we hand this to the authorities, it is going to be the most thorough case file they have ever seen. No one is going to dismiss this woman again. What about the stepfather, a voice from the back? Younger brother, maybe 30. Patches reading gunner. Wade Hollister is at his house right now, thinking he has gotten away with murder. Vic's voice went cold. He thinks his wife is dying in the woods. He thinks his stepdaughter is asleep in her bedroom. He does not know Rosie escaped. He does not know we are coming. He let that image settle. By the time he figures it out, it will be too late. But we do this right. Legal. Smart. We are not vigilantes. We are witnesses. We are rescuers. We are the people who step in when every other system fails. He looked around the room. Clear, clear. The response was unanimous. 60 voices in unison. Then let us move. Every second we waste talking is a second Cora Bennett does not have. The brothers poured out of the roadhouse like a coordinated military operation. Decades of riding and formation translated seamlessly to search and rescue logistics. Garrett pulled on his leather vest, walked to where Rosie sat with Hawk. She looked up at him. This tiny warrior in purple pajamas who had done more than anyone should ever ask of a child. Your mommy taught you well. Garrett said it quiet. For her ears only. Everything you did tonight, the counting, the map, the running, the finding us, she prepared you for this. Rosie nodded, tears threatening again but held back by sheer will. She said someday I might have to be brave enough for both of us. She said when that day came, I would know what to do. And you did. I did. Garrett put his hand on her shoulder. Gentle. The way he used to touch Emily before the leukemia took her. We are going to bring her home. And then you can tell her yourself that you remembered everything. That you were brave enough for both of you. He turned before she could see the moisture in his own eyes. Doc Patricia arrived as they were mounting up. 53 years old, former ER nurse, current club medic. She took one look at Rosie's bandaged feet and pale face and immediately started issuing directives to Hawk about warming protocols and fluid intake and signs of shock to watch for. Garrett caught her eye. Keep her safe. With my life, Patricia promised. Then Garrett was on his Harley, Vic beside him. Behind them, a wave of motorcycles that witnesses would later describe as like rolling thunder moving through the night. By the time they reached the access road to State Game Lands 93, they numbered 140 riders. Pine Ridge Chapter, Scranton Chapter, Wilkes-Barre Chapter, Hazleton Chapter. Every brother within 75 miles who could move had moved. The formation pulled in tight, disciplined, parked in organized rows along the frozen logging road. Engines died one by one until the only sound was wind through bare trees and the collective breath of 140 men preparing to save a stranger. Vic held up Rosie's map, pulled out a tactical flashlight. Riggs, you know this area hunted here 20 years ago. There is a creek that runs northeast about a mile in. Maintenance roads every half mile. If Wade wanted somewhere isolated but accessible by vehicle, he would use the old logging paths. Then that is where we start. They split into 7 teams of 20. Each team assigned a grid section based on Rosie's crayon landmarks. Each team had a tracker with military or hunting experience. Each team had someone with medical training. Each team had someone designated to photograph and document everything. Brothers who had spent their lives being dismissed by society as criminals and thugs organized into the most efficient search and rescue operation Pike County had ever seen. Team 1, Garrett called out, "You have the northeast quadrant. Start at the Lightning Oak and work east toward the creek." Team 2, southwest quadrant. Work from the access road toward the ridge. He kept assigning, kept moving, kept thinking about a 7-year-old's crayon map and a mother who had prepared her daughter for exactly this moment. Cora Bennett had known she might die, and she had made sure her daughter would not die with her, had taught Rosie how to survive, how to fight, how to find help when all the official channels had failed. That kind of mother did not give up easy. That kind of mother was still fighting. Even now, even locked in a metal box in frozen woods, with her body temperature dropping degree by degree, she was fighting, and 140 Hells Angels were about to fight beside her. The teams moved out. Garrett led Team 1 into the darkness. Flashlight beams cutting through the trees, boots crunching on frozen ground, breath visible in the sub-zero air. Behind them, the glow of Rosie's roadhouse faded. Ahead, nothing but darkness and trees, and somewhere in this frozen wilderness, a woman who deserved better than what the world had given her. The search pattern unfolded with military precision. 20 brothers per team spread 50 feet apart, moving in synchronized lines through frozen woods. Flashlight beams sweeping left and right, eyes scanning for any sign of disturbed ground or hidden containers. Garrett checked his watch. 12:03. 6 hours, 16 minutes since Cora Bennett had been sealed in that chest. If Wade's calculation was correct, 8 to 10 hours until death. They had somewhere between 90 minutes and 3 hours and 44 minutes. Maybe less. Metal conducted cold faster than air. The temperature kept dropping. Wind chill had pushed the effective temperature below zero. Every minute counted, every second mattered, and somewhere in this dark, frozen forest, a mother was waiting. Waiting for the daughter she had trained to save her. Waiting for the strangers her daughter had trusted. Waiting for the miracle she had engineered herself. Because Cora Bennett had not thrown that ring in despair. She had thrown it in strategy. A signal to her daughter, a message, a final instruction: run, find help, remember what I taught you. Be brave enough for both of us. And Rosie had been. 7 years old, bare feet, purple pajamas, sub-zero temperatures, 2.3 miles of frozen road between her and the only light still burning in a dark world. She had run it all for her mother. Now 140 men in leather vests were running too, searching, fighting against time and cold and the terrible math of hypothermia. For a woman they had never met. For a child who had asked them to believe her when no one else would. For the simple reason that it was the right thing to do. The search continued. The clock kept ticking. And somewhere in the frozen darkness, Cora Bennett held on, waiting for her daughter's impossible hope to become something real. Inside the metal box, Cora Bennett had stopped feeling her fingers 3 hours ago. The cold had come in stages. First the shivering, violent tremors that rattled her whole body against the steel walls of her prison. Then the numbness. Creeping up from her feet, her hands spreading inward like ice water filling her veins. Now she existed in a strange twilight. Not quite conscious, not quite unconscious. floating somewhere between life and death while her body temperature dropped degree by degree. 31 years old, 5'4", 118 pounds, curled in fetal position on the metal floor of a 6-foot Joe box tool chest, the kind construction companies use to secure expensive equipment, the kind her husband had modified with a padlock on the outside. She could not see anything. The darkness was absolute, could not hear anything except her own shallow breathing and the occasional creak of metal contracting in the cold. But she could think, and she thought about Rosie. Her daughter would have found the ring by now, would have understood the message. They had practiced this, not explicitly, not in words Wade might overhear, but in games, in lessons disguised as play. If you ever see Mommy's special ring somewhere, it should not be. What do? I find help. I tell someone everything. Where do you go? Somewhere with lights, somewhere with people. I count the street signs so I know how far I went. What if the people look scary? Mommy says sometimes the scariest looking people are the safest ones because mean people usually look nice. Cora had spent 6 months preparing her daughter for this moment, teaching her without teaching her, training her without Wade knowing, because Cora had known. From the first time Wade's charm slipped and she saw the coldness underneath, from the first time his hand connected with her face and he apologized so sweetly she almost believed it would never happen again. From the moment she overheard him on the phone with Bryn in September, laughing about how easy it had been with Rebecca, how the insurance money had set him up nicely, how Cora's settlement was even bigger. She had known she might not survive, so she had made sure Rosie would. The cold pressed deeper. Cora felt her heartbeat slowing, 60 beats per minute, 55, 50. Her body shutting down non-essential functions trying to preserve the core. Not yet. She forced her frozen fingers to move, dragged them across the metal lid above her, found the scratches she had made earlier. Deep grooves where her fingernails had torn against steel. She had fought. When Wade first locked her in, she had screamed and clawed and kicked, had torn one fingernail completely off trying to pry the lid open. The pain had been distant, unimportant. All that mattered was escape, but the chest was industrial grade, built to resist exactly this kind of desperate assault. After an hour, she had stopped fighting the box, started fighting the cold instead. She had pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around herself, breathed into the small space between her body and the thin emergency blanket Wade had thrown in with her. He had laughed about that blanket. Do not say I never gave you anything, Cora. Little something to keep you company. Not that it will help. But hey, I am not a monster. The blanket did almost nothing against the metal cold seeping through the walls, but it gave her something to hold on to, something to wrap around her face when the temperature dropped so low she could feel ice forming in her nostrils. She had counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, counted to 100, started over. 1, 2, 3, 4, a meditation technique she had learned from a library book on surviving trauma. Focus on the breath. Stay present. Do not let the mind spiral into panic. The book had been written for emotional trauma. Cora had adapted it for survival. Every breath was one more breath closer to rescue. Every minute was one more minute Rosie had to find help. She had thrown the ring at 5:47. 8 hours until hypothermia death, Wade had said. That meant she had until approximately 1:47 in the morning, assuming she stayed conscious enough to keep fighting, assuming her heart did not give out from the cold, assuming Rosie had understood. Rosie had understood. Cora believed this with everything she had left. Her daughter was smart, observant, brave in ways that broke Cora's heart because no 7-year-old should have to be that brave. Rosie would find the ring, would remember the lessons, would run. The only question was whether help would arrive in time. Cora's thoughts drifted. The cold made it hard to focus. Memories surfaced unbidden. Kevin's face on their wedding day. Rosie's first steps. The sound of her daughter's laugh before Wade came into their lives and everything good began to rot. She thought about the life insurance policy. $475,000. Wade had taken it out 6 months into their marriage, had forged her signature on the application. She had only found out about it 3 weeks ago when she accidentally saw a statement he had left on his desk. $475,000 for her death, plus the $41,000 remaining from Kevin's settlement, over $500,000. The same math he had done with Rebecca. Cora had never known Rebecca Hollister. She had died 2 years before Cora met Wade. Car accident, Wade said. Icy bridge, terrible tragedy. But Cora had done research, had gone to the library when Wade thought she was grocery shopping, had found the old newspaper articles. Rebecca Hollister, age 28, single vehicle accident on Henderson Bridge. Car plunged into icy water. Death ruled accidental. Her sister had tried to tell police Rebecca was planning to leave Wade, that Rebecca was afraid of him, that the accident was suspicious. No one had listened, just like no one had listened to Cora. CPS police, church, court. 4 times she had tried. 4 times she had been turned away. Wade was too charming, too connected, too good at wearing the mask of a decent man, and now she was dying in a metal box because every single institution designed to protect her had chosen to believe him instead. Not yet. Cora forced her frozen lungs to expand, drew in air that felt like knives. Rosie was out there, running, fighting, being brave enough for both of them. Her daughter would not fail, which meant Cora could not fail either. She could not give up, could not let the cold take her before help arrived. Even if her body was shutting down, even if her heartbeat slowed to 40 beats per minute, even if frost formed on her eyelashes and her thoughts fragmented into disconnected images, she would hold on, for Rosie, for the life they would have together once this nightmare ended, for the chance to look her daughter in the eyes and say, "You saved me. You remembered everything. You were brave enough for both of us." Cora curled tighter into herself, counted her breaths, and waited for the sound of rescue that might never come. Miles away in the frozen woods of State Game Lands, 93, 140 men searched for a woman they had never met. The temperature had dropped to 15 below zero. Wind cut through the trees like razors. Even with heavy leather jackets and thermal layers, the cold found ways in, seeped through seams, bit at exposed skin, turned breath to vapor the instant it left warm lungs. Garrett Colton led Team 1 through the northeast quadrant. 20 brothers spread in a line, each man visible to the 2 on either side, flashlight beams sweeping the darkness. They had been searching for 47 minutes. In that time, they had covered approximately 1 square mile of frozen forest. Found 3 abandoned deer blinds, 2 illegal dump sites, 1 rusted truck chassis from the 1950s. No tool chest, no Cora Bennett. The map. Garrett pulled out Rosie's crayon drawing for the 10th time. Lightning Oak, creek, clearing. We passed the Lightning Oak 12 minutes ago. The brother beside him, a tracker named Cole, who had spent 20 years hunting these mountains, studied the drawing with practiced eyes. Creek should be northeast, maybe quarter mile. Then that is where we go. They adjusted course, moved through the trees in coordinated silence. 2 decades of riding and formation had taught these men to communicate without words. Hand signals, head movements, the shared language of brothers who trusted each other with their lives. Garrett checked his watch. 12:17. 6 hours, 30 minutes since Cora Bennett had been locked in that chest. The math kept running in his head. 8 to 10 hours until death. Maybe less in this cold. Maybe much less if her core temperature dropped faster than Wade had calculated. They were running out of time. A bark echoed through the trees. Garrett froze. Every man froze. The bark came again. Then a sustained howl. The sound of a dog that had found something. This way. Cole broke into a jog. Garrett followed. They pushed through underbrush, crossed a frozen stream bed, emerged into a small clearing where Team 3 had converged around a German Shepherd going absolutely wild. Scout, former police K9, 12 years tracking criminals before retirement, now spending his golden years as the unofficial mascot of the Pine Ridge chapter. The dog's handler, a brother named Wright, held the leash tight while Scout strained toward a pile of brush at the edge of the clearing. He has got something. Wright's voice carried the tension of a man who had learned to trust his dog completely. Strong hit. Something under there. Garrett moved forward, studied the brush pile. Too uniform, too deliberate. Branches arranged to look natural but placed with obvious intent. He pulled away the first branch, then another. Found canvas tarp underneath. Dark green, covered in a thin layer of snow. His heart rate spiked. Everyone back. He kept his voice steady even as adrenaline flooded his system. Do not contaminate the scene. Wright, call Vic. Tell him Team 1 and 3 have found something in the northeast clearing by the creek. Wright was already on his radio. Garrett pulled on leather gloves, grabbed the corner of the tarp, pulled. The tarp slid away to reveal a Joe Box tool chest, 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, 2 feet deep, industrial-grade steel, the kind rated to secure $50,000 worth of construction equipment, the kind currently secured with a heavy-duty commercial padlock. Frost coated the metal surface, ice crystals sparkled in the flashlight beams, and on the lid barely visible scratches. Deep scratches, the kind made by fingernails dragged across steel in desperate terror. "Oh God," someone whispered. Garrett dropped to his knees beside the chest, pressed his ear against the frozen metal. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5. Silence. His heart clenched. Then, a sound, so faint he almost missed it. A whisper of breath, shallow, slow, labored, but present. "She is alive." The words exploded from his chest. "She is alive. I can hear breathing. Shallow but present. Get Vic here now. Get the medical team. Get bolt cutters." The clearing erupted into controlled chaos. Brothers converged from all directions. 20 became 40, became 60. Flashlight beams creating a ring of light around the chest. Vic arrived at a run. 61 years old, but moving like a man half his age when lives were on the line. He knelt beside Garrett, pressed his own ear to the metal, listened. His face changed when he heard it. The almost imperceptible sound of lungs still moving, a heart still beating. "She is a fighter." Vic said it with something like awe. "Over 6 hours in sub-zero temps, and she is still fighting." Bolt cutters, a brother named Reed pushed forward. Massive man. Arms like tree trunks, carrying industrial bolt cutters that looked small in his hands. Garrett took them, positioned the blades around the padlock. The metal was cold, so cold it burned through his gloves. So cold the cutters wanted to slip on the frozen surface. He braced his feet, set his grip, squeezed. The bolt cutters were rated for hardened steel. The padlock was commercial grade but not military spec. Still it resisted. Garrett squeezed harder, felt the muscles in his arms strain, felt the metal begin to give. 3 seconds of maximum pressure. 4, 5. The padlock snapped. The sound echoed through the clearing like a gunshot. Garrett threw the cutters aside, grabbed the lid of the chest. Vic grabbed beside him. Together they lifted. The hinges had frozen partially, fought them. But adrenaline and desperation won. The lid rose, and there inside was Cora Bennett, 31 years old, curled in fetal position, gray wool sweater, faded jeans, white sneakers, dark brown hair matted against her skull. Her face was the color of ash, lips blue, skin waxy, frost on her eyelashes. She was not moving. But when Garrett pressed 2 fingers to her neck, he felt it. A pulse, weak, slow, maybe 40 beats per minute, but present. "She is alive." He said it louder this time. Pulse present, breathing present. Critical hypothermia but alive. "Get medical up here now." A brother pushed through the crowd. Raymond Walsh, everyone called him Doc, retired paramedic, 52 years old, had seen more trauma in emergency rooms and war zones than most doctors saw in a lifetime. He dropped to his knees beside the chest, assessed with practiced efficiency. "Do not move her yet." His voice was calm, clinical, the voice of a man who had learned to control emotion in crisis. "Her limbs will be rigid from cold. Moving her wrong could send cold blood to her heart and trigger cardiac arrest." He pulled a thermal blanket from his pack, began wrapping it around Cora without lifting her from the chest. "Core temperature is going to be critical. We need controlled rewarming. Hospital. Now." "How far to the road?" "Quarter mile." Cole answered. "Too far to carry without a stretcher." "We jostle her wrong and she arrests. Then we bring the transport to her." Vic was already issuing commands. "Reed, Miller, Dawson. You 3 go back to the trucks. Find the flattest path through these woods. Drive in as close as you can. The rest of you clear a path. Move anything that will slow us down. Brothers scattered. Chainsaws appeared from somewhere. Within minutes, the sound of engines and cutting filled the forest. Garrett stayed beside the chest, looked at Cora Benedict's frozen face, looked at the scratches on the inside of the lid, where she had clawed at steel trying to escape, looked at her hands, one fingernail torn completely off, dried blood on her cuticles. She had fought. For 6 hours and 30 minutes in sub-zero temperatures, sealed in a metal coffin, this woman had fought, had not given up, had not surrendered to the cold, had held on for her daughter, for the chance that impossible hope might become something real. Rosie's crayon map, Rosie's barefoot run, Rosie's desperate plea to strangers in a biker bar, all of it had led to this moment. A mother saved because her daughter remembered every lesson. A daughter who had been brave enough for both of them because Cora had made sure she would be. Garrett reached into his vest pocket, pulled out the Spider-Man figure Rosie had given him, held it tight. We found her. He whispered it like a prayer, just like we promised. Cora's eyes fluttered. For one moment, consciousness surfaced through the hypothermic fog. Her gaze found Garrett's face, a stranger's face. Leather vest, gray beard, Hell's Angel patches. The kind of man she had taught Rosie to trust. Her lips moved, almost imperceptible, a whisper so faint he had to lean close to hear. Rosie, she remembered. Garrett said it soft, for her ears only. Everything you taught her, she used it all. She found us, she saved you. The ghost of something moved across Cora's frozen features. Not quite a smile. Her muscles were too cold for that. But something, recognition, relief. The flicker of a mother's pride cutting through the hypothermic haze. Then her eyes closed again, consciousness retreating. But the faint rise and fall of her chest continued. She was still fighting. And now she was not fighting alone. The medical transport arrived 9 minutes later, a pickup truck with the bed cleared and padded with thermal blankets. Not an ambulance, but faster than waiting for official emergency services to navigate frozen logging roads. Doc supervised the transfer with surgical precision. 4 brothers lifted the chest with Cora still inside, easier than trying to move her frozen body. They loaded the entire chest onto the truck bed. Doc climbed in beside her, attached a portable oxygen mask, checked her pulse every 30 seconds. Pike County Hospital is 23 minutes. He spoke into his radio. I need you to call ahead. Tell them we are bringing a hypothermia victim. Female, early 30s, core temperature estimated below 90 degrees. Been in sub-zero exposure for over 6 hours. Have warming protocols ready. Have a cardiac team standing by. The truck started moving. Careful, slow, avoiding every bump that might jar a body too cold for rough handling. Garrett watched it go, then turned to Vic, the husband. Wade Hollister is at 1747 Ridgemont Trail. Vic's voice was ice. Thinks his wife is dying in the woods. Thinks his stepdaughter is asleep. Does not know Rosie escaped. Does not know we found Cora. What is the play we call the FBI? Vic pulled out his phone. Reaper has been working the digital angle. Time to see what he found. He dialed. The answer came on the second ring. Reaper, tell me you have something. Garrett could not hear the response, but he watched Vic's face change as he listened. Watched the anger build behind the president's eyes. After 2 minutes, Vic ended the call. Turned to the assembled brothers. Wade Hollister, Vic's voice carried through the clearing. Construction foreman, volunteer firefighter, church deacon. Married his first wife, Rebecca, in 2016. Rebecca died January 2019. Single vehicle accident. Car off a bridge into icy water. Insurance payout $180,000. He paused. Rebecca's sister, Michelle, told police Rebecca was planning to divorce Wade. Said Rebecca was afraid of him. Said the accident was suspicious. Investigation noted Rebecca's car was accelerating before hitting the guardrail. Not braking, accelerating. Murmurs through the crowd. But Wade had an alibi. Poker game with buddies, all confirmed. Case closed as accidental death. Vic's jaw tightened. Now it is 6 years later, January again, same month, and Wade's second wife, Cora, is locked in a metal chest in the woods while her body temperature drops toward fatal. Insurance policy on Cora. $475,000, taken out 6 months after the wedding. Signature forged according to the documentation Reaper pulled. He looked around at the assembled brothers. Same pattern, same month, same method of killing with cold. Bigger payout, serial killer. Someone said it out loud. Calculated, repeated, refined. Vic confirmed. And he would have gotten away with it again if a 7-year-old girl had not run 2.3 miles barefoot through sub-zero temperatures to find people who would actually listen. What about the girlfriend, Garrett asked. Bryn Kessler, age 32, dental hygienist in Scranton, been seeing Wade for 11 months. Reaper got into her text messages. Vic pulled up his phone. Read directly from the screen. January 14th, Bryn to Wade. Quote, cannot wait for Monday. New life, here we come. End quote, he scrolled. January 17th. Tonight, Bryn to Wade. Quote, weather is perfect. She will not last the night. End quote. The clearing went silent. Written evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. Vic's voice was flat, time-stamped, dated, enough to put both of them away for life. What do we do with it? We give it to people who can use it legally. Vic pocketed his phone. Reaper has a contact at the FBI, former colleague, spent 20 years investigating domestic violence homicides. He looked at Garrett. We are not vigilantes. We are witnesses. We document. We rescue. We hand everything to authorities who will actually act. He paused. But first we make sure Wade Hollister does not disappear before they can arrest him. You want eyes on the house? I want brothers on every road out of Pine Ridge Township. If Wade tries to run, I want to know which direction before he gets 2 miles. Done. Assignments went out. Brothers scattered to positions on county roads and highway on-ramps. A net closing around a predator who did not yet know he was trapped. Garrett stayed with Vic, the FBI contact agent Marcus Brennan. 23 years with the Bureau, specializes in domestic violence homicides. He is already on his way. How long? 90 minutes. Maybe less if he pushes it. Garrett nodded, looked at the empty chest still sitting in the clearing, the chest that had nearly become Cora Bennett's coffin. She is going to make it. He said it like a declaration, like speaking the words could make them true. She is going to make it because her daughter gave her the time she needed, because a 7-year-old was braver than every adult who failed them. Vic put a hand on Garrett's shoulder. Let us make sure that bravery counts for something. At Pike County Hospital, Cora Bennett arrived at 12:51 in the morning. Core body temperature, 89.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Stage 2 hypothermia. Heart rate 40 beats per minute. Blood pressure dangerously low. The ER team moved with practiced urgency. Warmed IV fluids, heated blankets, careful monitoring for cardiac arrhythmia. The cold had slowed everything down, including her heart's electrical system. Warm her too fast, and the sudden change could trigger ventricular fibrillation. Dr. Raymond Walsh, no relation to Doc the biker, led the trauma response. She's lucky, he told the nurse assisting him. Another 2 hours in those conditions, and we would be doing this in the morgue. He checked her vitals again. Whoever found her knew what they were doing. Kept her still, kept her wrapped, did not try to move her wrong. The nurse glanced toward the waiting room. There are about 60 bikers out there. Hell's Angels. They brought her in. Doctor, Walsh raised an eyebrow. Then remind me to thank them, because their patient is going to live. In the waiting room, brothers filled every chair and lined every wall. Leather vests, patches, bandanas. The kind of men most hospitals never saw except as patients after bar fights or motorcycle accidents. They sat in silence, waited, did not complain about the hard plastic chairs or the harsh fluorescent lights or the vending machine coffee that tasted like motor oil. They had done their part, found the woman, brought her in. Now they waited to hear if it had been enough. Garrett paced near the window, watched the parking lot fill with more motorcycles as word spread. 70 brothers, 80, more arriving every few minutes. His phone buzzed. Hawk. What is happening? Hawk's voice came through. Rosie is asking every 5 minutes if her mommy is okay. Tell her we found her mommy. Tell her the doctors are helping her right now. Tell her mommy is a fighter. Garrett paused. Tell her she saved her mommy's life, everything she did. It worked. He heard Hawk relay the message. heard a small voice respond, could not make out the words, but could hear the emotion. Relief, joy. The sound of a 7-year-old finally letting herself believe the nightmare might end. Doc Patricia wants to bring Rosie to the hospital, Hawk said. Kid will not rest until she sees her mom. Bring her. As soon as the doctors say Cora is stable enough for visitors. First face she should see is her daughter's. Copy that. The line went dead. Garrett kept pacing. At 1:37 in the morning, Dr. Walsh emerged from the treatment area. The waiting room went silent. 80 men in leather vests all watching the doctor with identical expressions of guarded hope. Dr. Walsh looked around the room, took in the crowd of Hell's Angels filling his emergency department. Core temperature is up to 94 degrees. He addressed them like a commanding officer reporting to troops. Heart rhythm has stabilized, blood pressure improving. She has pneumonia in both lungs from inhaling cold air for 6 hours, but we are treating that with IV antibiotics. He paused. She is going to survive. It will be a long recovery. Frostbite on her fingers and toes that may require further treatment. The cracked rib she came in with will need weeks to heal. Severe malnutrition that suggests long-term abuse. But she is alive and she is going to stay that way. The room exhaled, not cheering. These were not men who cheered. But something shifted in the collective tension. Shoulders relaxed, jaws unclenched. When can we see her, Garrett asked. She is unconscious and likely will be for another day at least. The hypothermia put her body through severe stress. She needs rest. Her daughter is on her way. 7 years old, she is the one who reported the kidnapping. Dr. Walsh's expression softened. I read the intake notes. The mother who was found locked in a tool chest in the woods. The daughter who ran barefoot through sub-zero temperatures to find help. He nodded slowly. When the mother wakes up, her daughter will be the first visitor I allow. That child earned it. Thank you, doctor. Dr. Walsh turned to go, then stopped. The police will want to speak with whoever found her. Document the scene, take statements. Already arranged, Garrett said. FBI is on the way. We have evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. Insurance fraud, possible connection to a previous death. The doctor's eyebrows rose. Then I will make sure our documentation of her injuries is thorough. Photographs, x-rays, everything you need to put whoever did this away forever. Appreciate that. Dr. Walsh disappeared back into the treatment area. Vic appeared at Garrett's elbow. Brennan is 30 minutes out. Reaper has everything organized. Financial records, text messages, timeline of abuse. Witness statements from the neighbors and church members who saw warning signs and did nothing. He paused. It is airtight. The kind of case that does not need a confession because the evidence speaks for itself. What about Wade? Brothers have eyes on the house. He is still there. Went to bed around 11, according to the lights. Probably sleeping peacefully while his wife was supposed to be dying in the woods. Garrett felt cold rage settle into his bones. Not for much longer. At 2:47 in the morning, FBI agent Marcus Brennan arrived at Pike County Hospital with 2 other agents and a prosecutor from the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. They walked into the waiting room full of Hell's Angels and did not flinch. Brennan was 54 years old, gray at the temples, wearing a suit that had seen too many middle-of-the-night crime scenes. He had the eyes of a man who had spent 2 decades looking at the worst humanity could produce and had learned to channel his disgust into meticulous prosecution. He found Vic immediately. Victor Tanner. That is me. I am Agent Brennan. Reaper sent me what you have. I need to see it all. Original documentation, chain of custody, everything. Vic gestured to Garrett. Riggs can walk you through. He was first on scene when the girl came to us. He led the search team that found the victim. Brennan turned to Garrett. Show me. For the next 90 minutes, Garrett and the brothers laid out everything. The crayon map, the wedding ring with bloodstain, the timeline of events reconstructed from Rosie's testimony, the text messages between Wade and Bryn, the bank records showing Wade had drained $187,000 from Cora's settlement account for gambling for his girlfriend's apartment for vehicles and toys, the insurance policies, the forged signature, the pattern matching Rebecca Hollister's death 6 years earlier, the CPS reports, the police reports, the church counseling records, 4 separate instances where Cora had tried to get help and been turned away. Brennan reviewed it all with the focus of a man building a case that would not fail. This is the most thoroughly documented domestic violence case I have seen in 23 years. He said it quietly, looking at the assembled evidence spread across a hospital conference room table. You have done our job for us. We did our job. Vic corrected. Protecting someone the system failed. Your job is making sure Wade Hollister never sees daylight again. Where is he now? His house. 1747 Ridgemont Trail. He does not know his wife was rescued. Does not know his stepdaughter escaped. Does not know we are coming. Brennan nodded. Turned to the other agents. Let us go pick him up. At 5:18 in the morning, 11 hours and 31 minutes after Wade Hollister had sealed his wife in a metal chest to die, federal agents in Pennsylvania State Police arrived at 1747 Ridgemont Trail. The house was dark, peaceful, white siding, green shutters, American flag hanging limp in the pre-dawn stillness. The agents approached in formation, 4 at the front, 2 at the back. Standard apprehension protocol for a suspect who might be armed and dangerous. Agent Brennan knocked. No answer. Knocked again. 30 seconds later, a light came on inside. The door opened. Wade Hollister stood in the doorway, 42 years old, 6'1", 200 pounds of construction worker muscle, wearing gray sweatpants and a faded Eagles t-shirt. He looked confused, sleepy. The picture of an ordinary man roused from ordinary sleep. Can I help you, officers? His voice was calm, polite, the voice of a church deacon greeting unexpected visitors. Wade Thomas Hollister. Yes. What is this about? You are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, felony assault, financial exploitation, and insurance fraud. Wade's face went blank. I think there has been some mistake. No mistake. Brennan pulled out handcuffs. Turn around, hands behind your back. For 3 seconds, something flickered behind Wade's eyes. Calculation, assessment, the predator evaluating escape routes. Then it disappeared. He turned, put his hands behind his back, let the cuffs close around his wrists with a metallic click. I do not know what you think happened. His voice stayed calm, reasonable, but I am sure we can clear this up. My wife had some mental health issues, grief from her first husband's death. Sometimes she says things. Your wife is in the hospital recovering from hypothermia. Brennan's voice was ice, after being locked in a metal tool chest in State Game Lands 93 for over 6 hours. Your stepdaughter ran 2.3 miles barefoot through sub-zero temperatures to report the kidnapping. We have text messages between you and your girlfriend, Bryn Kessler, documenting the conspiracy. We have bank records showing you stole $187,000 from your wife's settlement account. We have evidence connecting you to the death of your first wife, Rebecca, 6 years ago. Wade's face did not change. Not a flicker of guilt. Not a moment of remorse. Just the flat, empty expression of a man who had been caught and was already calculating his next move. I want a lawyer. You will get one. Brennan nodded to the other agents. Get him in the car. They walked Wade Hollister out of his nice house in his nice neighborhood at 5:23 in the morning. The neighbors' lights were coming on, curtains twitching, faces appearing in windows, the charming church deacon, the respected volunteer firefighter, the good guy everyone trusted, being led away in handcuffs while dawn broke over Pine Ridge Township. Monsters wear ordinary faces. That is what Garrett thought as he watched from his motorcycle parked across the street. He had come to see this, to make sure it happened, to witness the moment a predator's mask finally fell away. Wade looked up as he was being put in the federal vehicle. His eyes found Garrett's across 30 feet of suburban lawn. For one moment, something passed between them. Not words, not gestures, just recognition. Wade saw the leather vest, the Hell's Angel patches, the scarred hands gripping motorcycle handlebars, understood that the people he had dismissed as criminals and thugs had been the ones to bring him down. The charming church deacon brought low by a biker and a barefoot child. Garrett held his gaze, did not blink, did not look away. Let Wade see exactly who had ended his freedom. Then the car door closed. The vehicle pulled away. And Wade Hollister disappeared toward a future of prison cells and federal charges and the certain knowledge that he would die behind bars. Garrett sat on his Harley for a long moment, watched the dawn light spread across the sky, thought about Cora Bennett recovering in a hospital bed, thought about Rosie Bennett waiting to see her mother, thought about Emily, his own daughter gone 7 years now, but never forgotten. He reached into his vest pocket, pulled out the Spider-Man figure, looked at the chipped paint, the bent leg, the small plastic symbol of hope a 7-year-old had placed in his hands. We kept our promise. He said it to the empty street, to the lightning sky, to the daughter he had lost and the daughter he had helped save. He tucked the figure back into his pocket, kicked his Harley to life, and rode toward the hospital where a mother and daughter were about to be reunited. Cora Bennett opened her eyes 47 hours after being pulled from the metal chest. White ceiling tiles, fluorescent lights dimmed to a soft glow, the steady beep of a heart monitor marking time and rhythmic pulses. Warmth. That was the first thing she truly registered. Warmth surrounding her body after so many hours of cold that she had forgotten what it felt like to not be freezing. Blankets layered over her, heated air flowing from vents above. The simple miracle of a temperature that did not want to kill her. She tried to move, found her limbs heavy, resistant, the kind of exhaustion that went deeper than muscle and bone. But alive. She was alive. The realization hit her like a wave, crashed through the fog of medication and hypothermia recovery, and brought tears to eyes that had been too frozen to cry for 6 hours in that metal box. Alive. Against all odds. Against Wade's careful calculations. Against the cold that should have claimed her. Alive. A small weight pressed against her right side. Cora turned her head slowly, found dark brown hair spread across the hospital blanket. A small hand wrapped around 3 of her fingers. A child's face peaceful in sleep for what might have been the first time in 19 months. Rosie, her daughter, her brave, impossible, miraculous daughter, sleeping in a chair that had been pulled close to the bed, body curled awkwardly, but refusing to let go of her mother's hand even in unconsciousness. Cora's vision blurred with tears. She remembered throwing the ring, remembered the cold certainty that she was going to die, remembered the desperate hope that Rosie would understand the message, would remember the lessons, would find help. And Rosie had, 2.3 miles barefoot through sub-zero temperatures, a 7-year-old running through the frozen night with nothing but a crayon map and a mother's training and the kind of courage most adults never found in a lifetime. Her daughter had saved her. Movement in the corner of the room. Cora's gaze shifted to find a man sitting in the shadows. Leather vest, patches she could not quite read in the dim light, gray hair pulled back, watching her with quiet attention. Not threatening, protective. Easy now. The man's voice was soft despite its gravel texture. You are safe. You are at Pike County Hospital. Your daughter has not left your side in 2 days except when the nurses made her eat. He leaned forward into the light. My name is Dalton. Everyone calls me Hawk. I am part of the group that found you. Cora's throat was raw, damaged from hours of breathing sub-zero air, but she forced the words out anyway. Hell's Angels. It was not a question. She had taught Rosie to find them, had told her daughter that sometimes the scariest looking people were the safest because mean people usually look nice. Yes, ma'am. Hawk's voice carried something like respect. Your daughter found us, told us everything. Let us write to you with a map she drew in crayon. He paused. She is the bravest person I have ever met, and I spent 12 years in Army Rangers. Cora looked at her sleeping daughter, at the bandages still wrapped around Rosie's feet, at the peaceful expression on a face that had seen too much fear for too many months. Wade. The name came out like poison, like something that needed to be expelled before it could do more damage. In federal custody. Hawk said it with grim satisfaction. Arrested yesterday morning. Conspiracy to commit murder. Attempted murder. Kidnapping. Financial crimes. They are also reopening the investigation into his first wife's death. Cora closed her eyes. Rebecca. She had never known Rebecca Hollister, but she had dreamed about her during those frozen hours in the chest, had wondered if Rebecca's last moments had been like hers. Cold. Alone. Betrayed by someone who had promised to love her. At least Cora had survived to see justice. Rebecca had not been so lucky. Your testimony will be important, Hawk continued. When you are ready, the FBI has been building a case. They have text messages between Wade and his girlfriend, bank records, insurance documents, everything they need. But your account of the abuse of the kidnapping of what he did to you, that will seal it. Cora nodded slowly. She would testify, would tell every detail, would make sure Wade Hollister never had the chance to do this to another woman. But right now, in this moment, there was only one thing that mattered. She squeezed Rosie's hand. The small fingers tightened in response. Dark eyes fluttered open, confused for a moment, then focusing on Cora's face. Mommy, the word came out as a whisper, fragile, hopeful, afraid to believe. I am here, baby. Cora's voice cracked. I am here. You found me. You saved me. Rosie sat up slowly, her eyes filling with tears that spilled down her cheeks unchecked. I remembered everything you taught me. The words tumbled out in a rush. I counted the street signs, and I drew the map, and I found the place with lights, and I told them everything, and they believed me, Mommy. They believed me, and they went to find you, and... She stopped. Overwhelmed, Cora reached up with her free hand, touched her daughter's face, wiped away tears with fingers that still bore frostbite damage. You were brave enough for both of us, just like I said you would be. Rosie climbed onto the bed, careful of the IV lines and monitor wires, curled against her mother's side with her head on Cora's shoulder. I was so scared. She whispered it into Cora's hospital gown. The whole time I was running, I was so scared, but I kept thinking about what you said. Emergencies mean you have to be smart, not scared. You were both. Cora wrapped her arms around her daughter, held her close, smart and scared and brave. That is what courage is, being scared and doing it anyway. They lay together in silence for a long moment. Mother and daughter, survivor and savior, two halves of a whole that Wade Hollister had tried to destroy and failed. Hawk slipped out of the room quietly, gave them privacy. But through the window in the door, Cora could see more leather vests in the hallway, more brothers standing watch, protecting them still. Even now, the days that followed blurred together in a haze of medical treatments and FBI interviews and the slow process of learning to feel safe again. Cora's recovery was complicated. Pneumonia in both lungs required IV antibiotics for 10 days. The frostbite on her fingers and toes needed careful monitoring. The cracked rib Wade had given her 3 weeks before the kidnapping throbbed with every breath. But the physical wounds were the easy part. The harder work happened in quiet moments. When a door closed too loudly and Cora flinched. When footsteps in the hallway made her heart race. When she woke at 3 in the morning, gasping, certain she was back in the metal box, certain the cold was closing in again. Rosie had nightmares too. Different ones. Dreams of running through snow that never ended. Dreams of finding the roadhouse dark and empty. Dreams of arriving too late. They worked through it together, mother and daughter, learning to sleep without fear. Learning to trust that the locks on doors were keeping danger out, not trapping them in. A woman named Patricia came every day. Doc Patricia, the brothers called her. Former emergency room nurse, current club medic, 53 years old with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes that had seen enough trauma to recognize it in others. She sat with Cora when the panic attacks came, taught breathing exercises, talked about PTSD and recovery timelines and the difference between surviving and healing. You did not just survive one night, Patricia said during one of their sessions. You survived 19 months of systematic abuse. You survived a system that failed you 4 times. You survived a man who had gotten away with murder before. She paused. That kind of survival changes you. Leaves marks. The goal now is not to pretend it did not happen. The goal is to integrate it, to make it part of your story without letting it become your whole story. Cora listened, absorbed, applied the lessons like she had applied everything else in her life, with determination, with focus, with the knowledge that Rosie was watching, learning, taking cues from her mother about how to process trauma. If Cora fell apart, Rosie would learn that falling apart was the only option. So Cora did not fall apart. She bent, she shook, she cried in private moments when Rosie was asleep, but she did not break. 3 weeks after the rescue, Cora and Rosie moved into a new apartment, 2 bedrooms on the 3rd floor of a renovated building in Scranton, 47 miles from Pine Ridge Township, far enough that they would not run into anyone who had known them during the Wade years. The rent was controlled. The security system was state-of-the-art. The first month's payment came from something called the Brotherhood Emergency Fund. Cora had tried to refuse. "We cannot take charity," she had told Garrett when he explained the arrangement. "I need to stand on my own, build something real." "It is not charity," Garrett had replied. "It is family helping family. You pay it forward someday when you are able. Help someone else who needs it." She had accepted. The apartment filled with donated furniture, a couch from one brother's wife, a dining table from another, beds and dressers and kitchen supplies that appeared without explanation or expectation of repayment. Rosie got her own room for the first time in 19 months, painted the walls purple herself with help from Hawk's twin daughters. Cora stood in the doorway watching her daughter laugh. Actually laugh. The sound so foreign after months of silence and fear that it brought tears to her eyes. This was what recovery looked like, not the absence of pain, but the presence of joy alongside it, not forgetting what had happened, but building something new on top of the wreckage. The criminal case against Wade Hollister proceeded with the inexorable weight of overwhelming evidence. Federal prosecutors had more than they needed: text messages, bank records, insurance documents, medical reports detailing Cora's injuries, photographs of the crime scene, the metal chest with scratch marks on the inside of the lid. But they wanted more. They wanted testimony. Cora gave it, sat in a federal building in Philadelphia with FBI agents and prosecutors, and told them everything. Every detail of the 19 months, every instance of abuse, every attempt to get help that had been ignored. She told them about the first time Wade hit her, 3 months after the wedding, a slap across the face that he apologized for so sweetly she almost believed it was an accident. She told them about the isolation, the phone that broke and was never replaced, the car that stopped working and was never fixed, the family and friends who slowly disappeared from her life because Wade made contact impossible. She told them about the financial control, how Wade had insisted on managing the settlement money because he was better with numbers, how $263,000 had become $41,000 in less than 2 years, how she had discovered the gambling debts and the girlfriend's apartment and the trucks and motorcycles bought with her dead husband's legacy. She told them about the escalation, the cracked rib, the rope burns on her wrist from being restrained, the fingernail she had torn off trying to escape the chest. She told them about the systems that had failed her, the CPS investigator who had spent 20 minutes in her home and closed the case as unfounded, the police officer who had accepted Wade's explanation and filed a report as verbal argument only, the pastor who had counseled her to pray for patience and remember that marriage was sacred, the judge who had denied her protection order because there was no documented evidence of physical abuse. 4 chances, 4 failures. And then she told them about Rosie, about the lessons disguised as games, the map reading, the street sign counting, the emergency protocols practiced until they were second nature, about the message she had sent by throwing her wedding ring out the truck window, the signal only her daughter would understand, about the 7-year-old who had run 2.3 miles barefoot through sub-zero temperatures because her mother had taught her to be brave enough for both of them. The prosecutors listened in silence. When Cora finished, the lead attorney, a woman named Catherine Wells, who had spent 15 years putting domestic abusers in prison, looked at her with something like awe. "Mrs. Bennett," she said quietly, "in all my years doing this work, I have never seen a mother prepare her child the way you did. You saved your own life by teaching your daughter how to save it." Cora shook her head. "Rosie saved my life. I just gave her the tools. That is what good mothers do," Catherine replied. "They give their children the tools they need to survive, even when they cannot be there to protect them directly." She paused. "Your testimony combined with your daughter's and the physical evidence makes this case unlosable. Wade Hollister is going to prison for the rest of his life, and we are going to make sure the investigation into Rebecca Hollister's death results in additional charges. He will never hurt anyone again." Cora felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of fear she had carried for 19 months. The constant background terror that Wade would find a way out, would charm someone into believing him, would escape consequences the way he always had. That knot finally began to dissolve. Bryn Kessler broke first, Wade's girlfriend, his co-conspirator, the woman who had texted "weather is perfect, she will not last the night" while Cora was freezing to death. Faced with federal charges of conspiracy to commit murder, Bryn took a deal, 18 years in prison, in exchange for full testimony against Wade. She told the prosecutors everything. How Wade had approached her 11 months ago. Charming, attentive, full of plans for a future together once he got his hands on his wife's money. How he had described the insurance policy, the timeline, the method, using coal because it left no marks and could be ruled accidental exposure. How he had laughed about Rebecca, about how easy it had been, about how no one had questioned the accident, about how Cora would be even easier because he had learned from his mistakes. She told them about the phone call Rosie had overheard, about Wade's casual confidence as he laid out the murder plan. Just like with Rebecca, nobody questioned that one. Bryn's testimony was devastating, not because it revealed anything the prosecutors did not already know, but because it painted Wade Hollister as exactly what he was, a calculated predator, a serial killer who chose his victims carefully, who used charm as camouflage, who exploited every weakness in the system designed to stop him. Rebecca's case was reopened. Pennsylvania State Police re-examined the evidence from her death 6 years earlier. The car that had accelerated into the guardrail instead of braking. The life insurance policy increased just weeks before the accident. The sister who had tried to warn them that Rebecca was afraid. New forensic analysis found evidence of brake line tampering, not corrosion, deliberate sabotage. Wade Hollister was charged with first-degree murder in addition to his other crimes. 2 wives, 2 insurance payoffs, 2 murder attempts and 1 successful one thwarted by a barefoot child. The pattern was undeniable. The trial lasted 2.5 days. Pike County Courthouse, July. 6 months after a frozen January night when everything had changed. The courtroom was packed, 60 Hells Angels in the gallery, leather vests and patches and the kind of presence that made the bailiffs nervous until they realized these men were here as witnesses, not threats. Cora sat in the front row with Rosie beside her, Doc Patricia on Rosie's other side, Garrett behind them. Wade Hollister sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him, face expressionless. The charming church deacon, the respected volunteer firefighter, the good guy everyone had trusted, stripped down to what he had always been underneath, a monster wearing an ordinary face. The prosecution presented their case with methodical precision. The text messages, the bank records, the insurance policies, the medical documentation of Cora's injuries, the photographs of the metal chest with scratch marks on the inside of the lid. Bryn Kessler testified, kept her eyes down, could not look at Cora or Rosie as she described her role in the conspiracy. The CPS investigator testified, admitted she had spent only 20 minutes in the home, admitted she had closed the case based on Wade's charm rather than any real investigation. The police officer testified, admitted he had accepted Wade's explanation without questioning Cora privately, without looking for signs of abuse, without doing his job. The pastor testified, admitted he had counseled Cora to stay in a marriage that was killing her, admitted he had believed Wade over a terrified woman because Wade was a church deacon and Cora was just a wife. Each witness painted the same picture. A system designed to protect vulnerable people that had failed at every level. A predator who had exploited every gap, every assumption, every bias. A woman who had survived despite everything stacked against her. Rosie testified on the second day. She sat in a special chair designed for child witnesses, a court advocate beside her, her mother's face visible in her peripheral vision. 7 years old, small and brave and devastating. She told the jury about the phone call she had overheard. Every word memorized with the perfect recall of a child who had learned to pay attention to survive. She told them about her mother's lessons, the map reading, the street sign counting, the emergency protocols. She told them about the night she ran, the broken window, the frozen ground, the 2.3 miles with bare feet on snow and ice. She told them about finding the roadhouse, about the biker who had believed her when no one else would. She told them about the wedding ring with blood on it, the message from her mother that had started everything. The jury watched her with tears in their eyes. 12 ordinary people, seeing what a child had done, what a mother had prepared her to do, seeing the kist of systemic failure written in a 7-year-old's testimony. Cora testified last. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, looked at Wade directly as she sat down, did not flinch when his eyes met hers. He had tried to kill her, had locked her in a metal box to freeze to death while he planned a new life with his girlfriend, had almost succeeded, but she was still here, still standing, still fighting, and he was the one in chains. She told the jury everything, the 19 months of abuse, the 4 times she had tried to get help, the systematic isolation and financial control, the night Wade had forced her into the truck, the drive to the woods, the moment he had locked the chest and walked away, the hours of cold, the darkness, the certainty that she was going to die, and the hope, the desperate, impossible hope that her daughter would find the ring, would remember the lessons, would be brave enough for both of them. When Cora finished, the courtroom was silent. Then the lead prosecutor stood. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, "is there anything you would like to say directly to the jury before they deliberate?" Cora looked at the 12 faces watching her. "I survived because my daughter saved me," she said quietly, "but I should not have needed saving. I went to 4 different institutions for help: Child Protective Services, police, church, court. Every single one failed me." She paused. "Wade Hollister is a monster, but he is not the only one responsible for what happened. The systems that are supposed to protect people like me, they failed too. They believed him because he wore the right mask. Church deacon, volunteer firefighter, good neighbor." Her voice hardened. "I am asking you to do what those systems did not. Look past the mask, see what he really is, and make sure he never has the chance to do this to anyone else." She turned to Wade, looked directly into his eyes. "You underestimated us. Both of us." The jury deliberated for 93 minutes, not because the case was complicated. The evidence was overwhelming, but because they wanted to be thorough, wanted to honor what Cora and Rosie had survived by giving the verdict the weight it deserved. Guilty, on all counts. Attempted murder. Guilty. Conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. Kidnapping. Guilty. Felony assault. Guilty. Financial exploitation. Guilty. Insurance fraud. Guilty. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. When that day came, the courtroom was just as full. 60 Hells Angels, Cora and Rosie in the front row, the prosecutors who had built the case, the FBI agents who had made the arrest, and Judge Sharon Westfield, the same judge who had denied Cora's protection order 8 months earlier, who had told her there was insufficient evidence, who had sent her back to a man planning her murder. She sat behind the bench now with haunted eyes, the weight of her failure visible in every line of her face. "Mr. Hollister," Judge Westfield's voice was steady despite the emotion underneath, "you used your position of trust as a first responder, a church member, a family man, to prey on vulnerable women." She paused. "You murdered Rebecca Hollister in 2019 and collected $180,000. You attempted to murder Cora Bennett in 2025 for $475,000. You are a calculated, remorseless predator who saw human beings as financial opportunities." Wade's face remained blank. Emotionless, the mask finally useless but still in place out of habit. For the attempted murder of Cora Bennett, life in prison without possibility of parole. For conspiracy to commit murder, 25 years consecutive. For kidnapping, 15 years consecutive. For the murder of Rebecca Hollister, life in prison without possibility of parole. Judge Westfield's voice hardened. "You will spend the remainder of your natural life in federal custody. You will never again have the opportunity to harm another woman." She looked at Cora, at Rosie. "This court hopes that the victims you sought to destroy find peace knowing you will die in prison." The gavel came down. The sound echoed through the courtroom like a door slamming shut, like the lid of a metal chest closing, but this time on the predator instead of the prey. Wade Hollister was led away in chains. He did not look back. Cora felt Rosie's hand squeeze hers, felt Garrett's hand on her shoulder, felt the presence of 60 men in leather vests who had become family. It was over. 19 months of terror, 6 hours in a frozen coffin, 6 months of recovery and testimony and waiting. Over. Wade Hollister would die in prison, would never hurt anyone again. Cora could finally breathe. The months that followed were about building rather than surviving. Cora found a job, administrative assistant at a law firm in Scranton that specialized in domestic violence cases. The partners had heard about her story, had reached out, had offered her a position that would let her help other women escape what she had barely survived. It was not charity, it was purpose. Every file she organized, every phone call she answered, every frightened woman who walked through the door, Cora saw herself, saw what she had been, saw what she had overcome. She was good at the work. She understood the fear in ways the attorneys never could speak to victims with the authority of someone who had been there, who had survived. Rosie thrived. Second grade at a new school with new friends who did not know anything about metal chess or frozen runs or barefoot heroism. Just a smart kid with dark eyes and a ready laugh and a mother who picked her up every day with a smile. The nightmares faded, slowly, not completely. But enough. Rosie started sleeping through the night, started laughing easily, started being a child again instead of a survivor. She still talked to Hawk's daughters every week, still asked when the brothers were coming to visit, still kept the Spider-Man figure on her bedside table even though she had given it away and gotten it back. It meant something now, something more than a toy, a symbol of the night she had been brave enough for both of them. September came golden and warm, 9 months since the frozen night that had changed everything. Cora stood at the kitchen counter of their apartment, helping Rosie with homework, math worksheets, reading comprehension, normal second grade work that felt like a miracle after everything they had survived. Through the window, the evening light painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and from somewhere in the distance came a familiar sound, motorcycles, the rumble of engines that had once meant rescue, that now meant family. Rosie looked up from her worksheet. Is that them? Sounds like it. She jumped up from the table, ran to the window, pressed her face against the glass like she had done every time the brothers came to visit. I see Riggs, and Hawk, and Iron Vic, and Doc Patricia. Cora smiled, joined her daughter at the window. The convoy pulled into the parking lot below. 10 motorcycles, chrome gleaming in the sunset light. They came every few weeks now, checking in, making sure everything was okay, bringing groceries or fixing things that needed fixing, or just sitting on the couch drinking coffee and telling stories. Family helping family. That was what Garrett had called it. Mom. Rosie turned from the window with shining eyes. Can they come to my birthday party next month? Of course, sweetheart. All of the Megs and Hawk and Doc Patricia and Iron Vic and everyone. Cora laughed. We can invite the whole club if you want. Rosie's face lit up. I want that. Because they are family. She ran for the door, ready to greet the brothers she had adopted as her own. Cora watched her go, thought about the night Rosie had run barefoot through snow to find strangers who looked like monsters but acted like protectors. Thought about how everything had changed because a child had been taught to trust the scariest looking people. The door burst open. Rosie's voice echoed down the hallway, excited greetings and rapid questions about who was coming to her party and whether Hawk's daughters could come too. Cora walked to the kitchen counter, picked up the Spider-Man figure that sat there now, moved from Rosie's bedside to a place of honor in the heart of their home. Paint chipped, one leg bent, worn from years of love, a symbol of hope that had turned out to be real. She set it back down, turned to join her daughter and the family they had found in the most unlikely place. The Roadhouse crew filled the apartment with noise and warmth and the particular kind of chaos that comes when bikers try to be gentle with a 7-year-old's enthusiasm. Garrett stood by the window, watching Rosie show Hawk's daughters her room, watching Cora laugh at something Iron Vic said, watching the life they had helped save being lived. Doc Patricia appeared beside him. You did a good thing, Riggs, she said it quietly, that night, believing her when nobody else would. Garrett shook his head. She did the good thing. I just listened. That is all it takes sometimes. Listening, believing, acting. Patricia paused. Most people do not do any of those 3 things. You did all of them. That matters. Garrett did not respond, but he reached into his vest pocket, pulled out the Spider-Man figure Rosie had given him months ago, and then returned after the trial. He had kept it since. A reminder, a talisman, a symbol of what courage looked like when it came in a package everyone else would underestimate. Rosie appeared at his elbow, looked at the figure in his hand. You still have it. Always. She was quiet for a moment, thinking, processing in that serious way children have when they are dealing with adult concepts. Mom says you saved her life, but you say I saved her life. Who is right? Garrett knelt down, made himself small enough to look her in the eyes. You both are, he said. Your mom saved her own life by teaching you everything you needed to know. You saved her life by remembering those lessons and being brave enough to use them. I just helped. That is all. Rosie considered this. So we are all heroes. Garrett smiled. Yes, sweetheart. We are all heroes. She nodded, satisfied with this answer. Then she hugged him, quick and fierce and full of the uncomplicated affection of a child who has learned to trust again. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for being brave enough to ask. She ran off to rejoin Hawk's daughters. Garrett stood slowly, tucked the Spider-Man figure back into his vest pocket. Cora appeared beside him. She is going to be okay, Cora said. We both are. Garrett nodded. You did good teaching her what you taught her. Most people would not have thought that far ahead. Cora's expression flickered. The shadow of memory crossing her face, I had to. Wade was not going to stop. I knew that from the beginning. So I prepared for the worst and hoped for the best. She paused. I just never imagined the best would look like 60 bikers in leather vests searching frozen woods at midnight. Life surprises you sometimes, Garrett said. Not always bad surprises. No, Cora agreed. Not always bad. They stood in comfortable silence. Two people who had been strangers 9 months ago, bound now by a night of terror and rescue, and the impossible courage of a 7-year-old. What happens now? Garrett asked eventually. Now we live. Cora said it simply. We heal. We help other people who are going through what we went through. And we remember that the world has more good in it than bad, even when the pain seems overwhelming. She looked at the room full of bikers and children and laughter. We found our family. That is what happens now. We hold on to it. Garrett nodded. That is a good plan. It is the only plan that matters. The sun set over Scranton. The apartment filled with warmth and noise, and the particular joy of found families celebrating survival. And somewhere in a federal prison, Wade Hollister sat in a cell that would be his home until he died, thinking about the wife he had tried to murder, the stepdaughter he had underestimated, the barefoot run through frozen darkness that had undone everything. He had calculated every variable: weather, temperature, timeline, insurance payout. But he had not calculated courage, had not imagined that a 7-year-old would break a window and climb down a porch roof and run 2.3 miles in purple pajamas with bare feet bleeding on frozen ground, had not believed that the scariest-looking people in Pine Ridge Township would turn out to be the ones who actually listened. That was his mistake, and he would pay for it with every remaining breath of his life. Cora did not think about Wade anymore. She had spent 19 months living in his shadow, 19 months afraid, 19 months preparing for the worst while hoping for rescue that never seemed to come from the people it should have come from. Now she was free, and freedom meant choosing what to think about, what to carry forward, what to leave behind. She chose to carry Rosie's courage, the brothers' loyalty, the second chance they had all built together. She chose to leave Wade in the past where he belonged, a nightmare that had ended, a monster that had been caged, a chapter that was finally closed. The apartment grew quiet as the evening aged. Brothers said their goodbyes. Engines roared to life in the parking lot below. The rumble faded into distance. Rosie fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from excitement, one hand still holding a piece of birthday party planning paper covered in crayon drawings. Cora carried her to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead, stood in the doorway watching her daughter breathe. 7 years old. Survivor. Hero. Just a kid now sleeping peacefully in a purple-painted room. Brave enough for both of them. Cora walked back to the kitchen, picked up the Spider-Man figure one more time, thought about everything it represented. A child's gift given in desperate hope, a promise made in a frozen parking lot, a rescue against impossible odds, a mother and daughter who had saved each other in ways nobody else could have. She set the figure back on the counter, looked out the window at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, other women were trapped in relationships that looked normal from the outside. Other children were watching their mothers suffer and wondering who they could tell. Other predators were wearing masks of charm and respectability while plotting terrible things. The system would fail some of them. That was the brutal truth Cora had learned. CPS investigators with too many cases. Police officers who believed charming men. Pastors who counseled patience instead of escape. Judges who demanded evidence that abuse victims could not safely gather. The gaps existed. The failures would continue. But there were also people like Garrett, like Vic, like Hawk and Patricia and all the brothers who had answered a midnight call because a child asked for help. People who listened, people who believed, people who acted. That was the hope Cora carried forward, that for every system that failed, there might be someone willing to step into the gap. That for every monster wearing an ordinary face, there might be protectors who looked scary but were not. That sometimes miracles came from the most unlikely places. From a child in purple pajamas, from strangers in leather vests, from a mother who taught her daughter to be brave enough for both of them. Cora turned off the kitchen light, walked to her own bedroom, lay down in a bed that was hers in an apartment that was hers in a life that she had survived to build. And for the first time in a very long time, she slept without nightmares. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new healing, new work at the law firm, helping other women find their way out of darkness. But tonight there was peace. There was safety. There was the knowledge that Wade Hollister would never hurt anyone again. There was a daughter sleeping soundly in the next room. There was family just a phone call away. And there was hope, real hope. The kind that came from surviving the impossible and discovering that you were stronger than you knew. The kind that came from a child's courage and a mother's preparation and the unexpected grace of strangers who became family. The kind that started with 6 impossible words whispered in a frozen parking lot. Mommy is in the box. Please help.